we're here. We're on. So get your MBA with me. So this is a new live streaming kind of thing I'm trying out. Going live right now, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Hopefully hopefully I'm not here by myself, but the idea is to talk about things in the MBA program and kind of bring them to light. Now, you'd be really surprised about what's in an MBA program that you kind of already know about, but there are some secrets that you might not know about. And not really secrets, but it's just kind of weird that you go like that the MBA program kind of is like gatekeeping a lot of this information, but not necessarily anymore. Like the internet has, democratized information, and really like we are past the point of, we're past the point of data collection in our society, and we're to the point where we need to take the info that we've learned and apply it, right? So if you're here, drop a comment wherever you're listening to. Like I said, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, drop a comment wherever you're listening if you have any questions about financial literacy, because that's the main thing I wanted to talk about today, to kind of go through, because I think it's super important to like help people understand, especially with all this craziness going on, where it's like people are listening to like these fake finance gurus, and it's extremely frustrating to like watch all of this unfold on social media, and like it's wrong, but like nobody really wants to tackle it. But I would love to hear from you guys, like what you want to hear about first. I want to make this super like to the point of for you guys, answering like very specific questions, because we can go all day down the rabbit hole of like, what is financial literacy? What do you need to know about? What do you want to accomplish with it? Right. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you guys have questions? Because there are a lot of things that we can talk about. And one of the big things that we could talk about is, and I made a video about this on TikTok, if you want to check that out. But the video on TikTok was why Rich Dad Poor Dad is the worst financial book you could read. And Rich Dad Poor Dad is truly the worst financial book that you could read if you want to get ahead, because it's just, first of all, even at the level that Robert Kiyosaki is at or was at the time he wrote the book. And even still, he talks today about a lot of things like, like he lives off of debt and all these things. And the biggest thing to keep in mind when you're listening to this kind of stuff is it's not the same. Like his entities are set up, like he has access to a lot of different like legal entities that a lot of people just don't really have the know-how to. So for like an example would be like setting up an S corp. So you probably heard on a bunch of like TikTok videos, like my wife sent me a TikTok video today that was like, you can pay your kids up to $13,000 a year. I think the limit is like $12,940 or whatever. And you can write that off. You can put that in a mutual for, a Roth IRA, $6,000 a whatever for 5 years. You have like over $1 million, $2 million or whatever. And it's true. All of that is true. But the difference is that when you do those kinds of things, you have to be an S corp, and an S corp is extremely expensive for the normal person to maintain. Like if your business isn't doing at least 150 in revenue, you're not, it's not worth it to have an S corp, because like I said, they're really expensive to maintain. You've got a lot to set up. You need an attorney or a CPA to really set that up for it to be done right? Like you need people with experience to do that. So there's a lot of like different like legal entities that when you're doing this, you're looking at, right? So it's just different. So like Robert Kiyosaki talking about all of this, like live on debt. And I think the biggest pet peeve for me is what he says, don't buy liabilities, buy assets. And like everybody has that. Everybody says that like it's a new word, right? Like a phrase. In the last few years, like don't buy liabilities, buy assets. And that just proves that you have no financial literacy. Like I would rather somebody say, I don't know, versus something like that. Because like then you know for sure like that you have zero idea of what you're talking about. And that's kind of the idea of like, get your MBA with me, because we can go through all of that. We can really break that down. So like, for example, I made a 60-second TikTok about this, but you know, I could make a longer, you know, and kind of go into deeper why that whole statement is wrong and why Rich Dad Poor Dad sucks. And let's talk about like personal financial literacy, right? So you have a personal financial statement that mirrors the accounting equation, right? So you have the accounting equation is assets minus liabilities equal equity, right? So if you have everything that you owe, or excuse me, everything that you own minus everything that you owe equals your equity or your net worth, right? And in a business, this gets really convoluted really quick, especially if you're dealing with like public companies. But for personal financial statements, it's what you have versus what you owe is your net worth, right? And so a lot of us could even have negative net worth, right? Because what we owe is more than what we own. And so getting this right and understanding like the basic financial equation helps us when we're looking at real life situations, right? So, and then you got to realize like too, you got to realize liquidity, right? So like cash is liquid because you can use it right away, right? Things like cars are not liquid assets. Retirement accounts aren't liquid assets. Like these things can't be converted easily into cash to be used immediately. And so when you're talking, and that's different for a business, liquidity in a business is usually short term, and that means a year. So things that can be converted into cash in a year, or like will be converted into cash in a year. And so when we listen to like Robert Kiyosaki talk about like all of these things, like business finance is different than shoot, I lost my pen. Perfect. But like business finance is different than personal finance, right? So like your business financials, sorry, I'm all over the place. But your business financials aren't going to be the same as your personal financials, right? Like those are two very different things when you're talking about like financial literacy, right? A big piece of financial literacy is just understanding like what you have in your sphere of influence, right? So like what are some of the major contributions to assets in a person, like personally, right? So like assets are like physical usually. So like a good example of assets are like cash, houses, cars. And here's the thing that really pisses me off, right? So cars are an asset. Cars are assets. If you grew up listening to Robert Kiyosaki and all these other guys teaching you this bullshit that like cars are liabilities, right? And then you own a business one day and you don't do any extra homework. You just went in, you know, you learned all this stuff from Robert Kiyosaki and all these guys who say like, don't buy liabilities like cars and parties. And you transfer that into a business and you buy a car for your business, but you put the car as a liability. That's fraud according to the IRS. And they're going to come after you for everything that you're worth, right? Because the car is an asset. The loan that you take out against the car is a liability, or if you have some kind of note against it, right? So that's the idea. And that's the issue that we have when we talk about these stupid phrases like don't buy liabilities, buy assets. And here's the other thing. When you're listening to Robert Kiyosaki or some of these other financial people, they'll go like, don't buy depreciating assets. Well, here's the problem with that whole statement. Again, going back to definitions, right? Depreciation is actually a huge tax shield opportunity for businesses. Everything depreciates except for land. And most companies use these tax shields for depreciation, amortization, right? Like you use a certain portion of this during your time. And that's part of this learning and getting your MBA, right? Because like this stuff is serious. This stuff is really important. And knowing the difference between an asset and a liability is huge. Your credit card payment is a liability, right? So the thing they got right though, and the principle that they try to teach you is like you don't want to spend needlessly on things, which I agree with, right? Which I totally agree with. Like you don't want to, credit card debt is not good debt, right? Because typically what you're doing with credit cards is you're buying things that have no value to you, right? Like you just wanted to jump ahead of the line and not wait for whatever you wanted, right? So credit card debt is not necessarily a good thing. You should avoid that like the plague, in my opinion, because and see again, here we go. We're getting into all of this, like, but if I pay it off every month and blah, blah, blah. Well, do you know how credit card companies make money? They don't make money off of interest most of the time. Credit card companies make money off of the merchant services that the merchant portals, right? So if you own a business, you're familiar with merchant accounts. If you don't, then you'll get familiar with merchant accounts, which are that every time somebody swipes their card at your business, it costs you money. Could be as low as 1.5%, like 1.5% of whatever the transaction is plus 30 cents. It could be as high as like sometimes Stripe, you're getting charged 2.9% plus a 30 cent, per transaction. That's how credit cards make their money. It's not necessarily interest, right? They don't make a ton of money off of interest, although they might now because of where we're at with credit cards and stuff, right? But typically, credit card companies make money from their merchant services. So even if you're like, oh, the credit card companies aren't making any money off of you, they're definitely making money off of you, because every time you swipe that card, that merchant is getting charged for that, and their prices are being adjusted to counteract the cost of that merchant fee, right? So that's this whole idea. Like, I stay away from credit cards. Realize that like assets are what you have typically, right? And like I said, it gets really convoluted. Like when you're talking about public companies, when you're talking about real, like goodwill as an asset or things like that. Like, and then you have things like contra assets that if you have questions, again, put them in the chat, and I'll love to answer them. But like I said, so you have these kinds of things. But for your personal financial statement, your assets are things like cars and houses, and then what you owe against those are the liabilities that you carry day to day. And then when you take what all of your assets are worth minus what you owe on all of your assets, that is your net worth. And that's the first thing, right? So like debt doesn't play the same role personally as it might in a business. Debt can be a good thing in a business sometimes, right? Like you can leverage. You don't necessarily have the cash, but somebody will give it to you, and then you work out the terms and then go from there. Like, I'm not as crazy as Dave Ramsey. Like, it'd be cool if you could pay cash, but there are some advantages to loans when you're dealing with a business though. If you're personal, like your personal stuff, right? Like, don't get into a lot of debt, like bootstrap that stuff. You know what I mean? And part of, learning about this stuff is how can you bootstrap a business, right? Especially at like going into the climate that we're going into, right? Like it gets really muddy. The waters get really murky when you're like, hey, I'm going to use this credit card to start this business, or I'm going to use this credit card to start to buy a rental property. And like, that's really dangerous. It's really dangerous because when you're talking about finance again, and let's go into a little bit of the MBA stuff. When you're talking about finance, you plug in an equation. When you're talking about like returns, like NPV, like net present value or internal rate of return or any of those things, you have what's called a beta, which is the risk factor. And that plays a huge part in that equation, that you account for risk, right? And again, we don't do that personally when we should be considering the risk, right? So whenever I look at a business decision personally, I go like this. I go, hey, if I lost all of the money, that I put into this? Would I still be okay? Would it be worth it to me even if I went to zero? And if the answer is yes, then I do it. And if the answer is no, and there's really no justification and there's no way for me to work around it or make it better, then I really don't do it. Like, even if I lost it all, I would still learn something, and the outcome would be good for me. Then I definitely do it. But if it doesn't, then I'm out. And that's how you have to look at it. That's the risk factor. That's the beta that we all plug in. But you got these real estate guys who are like, I'm going to credit card stack $100,000, go buy this property that my mortgage is going to be $1,200 and I can rent it out for $1,800. You got to like, dude, that's only $1,200 to $1,800. That's only $600 extra a month, right? Like, for all of that liability, you're gonna risk all of that for $600 a month. And some people are like, well, yeah, but like, you got to realize, like, if the furnace goes out on that, you like flipping houses and having rental properties, that's like a pretty cash intensive business. So if you don't have, a lot of like liquid cash, it's going to be really tough. You know what I mean? To like sustain a real estate business. And so that's just this whole thing that I like to look at, which is how are we smart with our money, and then personally, and then how do we translate that into business, right? Because like, I think that the news just got released the other day, which was somebody just won the lottery, or the winning ticket was sold in like LA County or whatever. And so you look at that and you're like, dude, the number of people who are still millionaires after they win the lottery is very low. If it's not zero, I'll be surprised, right? Because you have to know how money works in order to keep it. Like, you can't buy, like, you can't give your way, you can't give people a lot of money and expect them to know what to do with it. Like, that's not reasonable, because we don't, like, there's levels to this stuff, right? And so personally, you want to have some basic financial literacy, right? Which is, for me, stay out of debt as much as you can. Like, I get it. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you got to get the car, you got to get the house, and we don't have enough cash. And with this inflation shit, it's bananas right now. But listen, try to stay out of at least meaningless consumer debt, like credit cards, buy now, pay later stuff. Like, don't do that stuff. Like, if you like, it's a control thing, right? Like, this is a mindset game rather than a math game. A lot of the times it really is a mindset and like a discipline game when you're talking about personal, like, financials, right? I think for me, what financial literacy comes down to is like understanding how to make money if you need to, and how to manage that money and like budget that money, right? And then kind of go from there, right? And then we can talk about all of this other stuff, like interest, like how interest is accrued, and how, like, you actually calculate things. But again, it's just so tough. Like, it's, when you're talking about loans and you're talking about interest rates, like, it's better to like earn interest than pay interest, which is really hard to do if you don't know what you're doing. And that's what I'm here for, teach people what they're doing. So that's what I'm saying. Debt does not play the same role in a personal household as it does in a business. So stay away from debt. But if you're a business person and you're like, dude, if I buy this, right? And that's when all of this comes in, right? Like, if I buy this machine with debt, what will it produce for me? And will the benefits outweigh the cost? And if we can make that, if we can make that equation balance in our favor, then let's do it, right? Like, okay. But again, it's the risk factor of, if this shit hits the fan, what are we going to do? Right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you have to think about. Like, you have to think about what you're going to do at the end of the day. And so my goal with this is just to like help people understand all of it. So, I mean, if you're listening, I know there's a few people listening right now, but if you guys have questions, though, let me know. Let's get our MBA together, man. It's been a wild ride for me on this journey, but would love to hear from everybody. I am going to do some little bit of homework actually, so we can do our MBA together. Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. But let me. I'm actually in an economics class right now, so we're learning all about economies of scale. But I really want to, like I said, guys, I really want to answer your questions, kind of turn this into a series, and then maybe bring some more people on as we go. I want to keep these pretty short though, 30 minutes maybe at the most, because just it goes on it gets wild. It gets wild when we're wild. Yeah, but if you got questions, man, let's talk about them. Everybody, any questions, whatever you want. Okay. While we do this, I got to do this. Yeah, man, life is crazy, and today's been a wild work. But drop your questions in the chat. Like if you got anything to ask, would love to answer any questions that you guys have. Make this more finance. It's an MBA live stream. So if you got questions about accounting, about finance, about whatever, drop them in the chat. Let's roll. Let's do this. Just like I said, I'm just kind of doing some homework right now, but let me know what you got. But dude, and by the way, these MBA programs are tough. They get kind of gnarly. They get real gnarly real quick. Yeah, we're talking about, economics right now, which is a big deal. Economic, to understand what's happening like in the country right now. A lot of things contributed to the inflation that we're seeing right now. Obviously printing money is a huge problem. And that's, printing money is a huge problem. That's why the interest rates rose, so that they can curb these banks from lending so much money, right? Because we have a fractional reserve banking system, which means if I give a bank $1, they can loan 10. Right. Which, and by the way, it's just fake money. It's money that they made up. The system is not, rigged for the common people's favor. So you really got to pay attention to like how you approach money and sales and financing and things like that. But yeah, my goal with this is just to like get everybody answer questions. Like I just really want to answer questions. I got a lot to say. But if I ramble, then it's not gonna be good, because I'll just go in circles. I got mad ADHD. I'll just go in circles. So drop those questions in the chat. I got like 5, 10 more minutes. Would love to hear from you guys. Whatever questions you have about personal finance, financial literacy, really anything that falls under the scope of an MBA. So like, and I'm not like the smartest person in the world, but the cool thing is that I do have answers to questions, and I can help you. I have been doing a lot of this and been, making it work, man. And I'm really, one of the other big reasons I'm doing this is I really do want people coming into whatever kind of, if it's a recession that we're heading into, if it's whatever. I've heard people say it's like going to be the worst thing ever, or the best thing. Yeah, I don't know, right? Like, or nothing's going to happen, and you got soft landings and all this stuff, right? But like whatever happens, we all got to get our house in order. We've all got to like prepare ourselves and really understand what's going on. So if you're watching this, man, let me know. Let me know if you got questions or whatever, because I want to answer them. Oh, hey Joel, dude, I don't know why my chat didn't pop up over here, but Joel said, what's your opinion on inflation? Is it better to let it happen or to try and stop it? Yeah, that's a good question. With the Federal Reserve, what you're talking about is uh, how are they curbing it, right? Because if you try to curb it into like what they're doing right now, like raising rates like extremely fast, right? Then you're popping a bubble and you're heading into like a big recession that could hurt a lot of people. Here's the problem with uh, inflation. It's like how we got here, I think, is the more important thing, because it's like the whole student loan debate, in my opinion. Like inflation and the student loan debate, kind of the same answer applies. Like we could get rid of student loans, but the real problem isn't student loans. The real problem is the fact that we keep giving these loans out. It's not like we let 18-year-olds take out $250,000 for whatever degree. I mean, any degree for $250,000 is crazy. Doctors, lawyers, whatever, right? So I think when you talk about inflation, it's better to let things play out, in my opinion, right? It's better to let things play out the way that they're going to play out. Like in the middle of the pandemic, like, we're here right now in this situation because we printed 20%, it's like 80% of them, all the money in circulation right now was printed in the last 3 years or whatever. And that's what you have to remember. Like, we should have just let things run their course. Like the free market really does have the power to curb things, right? Like if people don't want to pay, the price, then we're intuitive, right? And that's kind of like a high level answer. There's a lot of nuances when it comes to like inflation, but generally speaking, it's not a problem with inflation that I'm concerned about. It's the problem of like how we got here and how do we like stop this? Like we shouldn't be printing money. Like the stimulus checks like weren't a great idea. Like even when we were going through that, it wasn't a good idea because we all knew what happened. Like free money doesn't exist. And if you just make it up, like that's the problem with the banking system. I just mentioned this before, like fractional reserve banking, right? The fact that if you give a bank $1, they can lend 10, magically just lend 10 on their own. Like that's a huge problem, right? And then you also have these crazy, and another thing with it is like this crazy, funding that people are getting, that people just were like trying to just go buck wild with like funding. So like angel investors, VCs, that's what's happening right now with the whole FTX situation. We can get into that if you want to. I've done a little bit of research on that, but the whole FTX situation is the fact that these guys were given billions and billions of dollars, and you're just like, they blew it, like literally just pissed it right down the drain. And I don't know if you know how VCs work, but these are companies that like syndicate basically money. They bring in pools, they raise money, and then they go invest it, right? Joel, dude, with all the questions, I love it, man. Can you explain fractional reserve lending more? Yeah, sure. So the idea of fractional reserve lending, or well, just banking, right? Because like that's what I was saying at the beginning of the show, which is like these rules don't apply to us, right? These rules don't apply to us. Like I can't make $1 and then go lend 10. For me, if I did that, like, first of all, there's no way, right? It's just like fake money. It's like you giving me $1 and then me going and getting a credit card and then giving you the credit card. Like it's dumb. So fractional reserve banking just basically says, and that's how they take your money, right? That's why the FDIC exists, right? Because your money is insured by federally up to $250,000 because these banks aren't liquid, and they have liquidity requirements, but the liquidity requirements aren't like you don't have. It's not 1-to-1, right? It could be 0.5 to 1, like meaning they can only need 50% or lower, right? So when you put your money into a checking account, they take that, like, and you never see it, but they lend out more. And so that's kind of how it works. So you got to be really careful with that. And that's why like credit unions and banks and this whole system's kind of crazy. But if you have more questions, let me know. Quince Quince asked, do you think Elon made a good decision with buying Twitter? Look, here's the deal with Twitter. I don't really know what's going to happen with Twitter. I'm on Twitter right now, and it just seems like it's kind of crazy. But here's the problem, though. Okay, if you're trying to combat free speech, like, is Elon making a good decision buying Twitter? Like, financially, he must have, because he must have thought it was a good idea. Like, I don't know business wise if it's a good idea, but if you're talking about the premise of like freedom of speech, if that's what you're talking about, that's a whole different thing that, I mean, starts getting political, and I and then you're talking about ethics, the ethics of what someone should be allowed to say and shouldn't be allowed to say, and then how people retaliate. Because, like, I don't know, if you're on Twitter, I don't know if you saw this whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing, but everybody's calling everybody on the left, or people who skew left at least, are calling Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer. And, like, look, I didn't follow the trial. I really don't give a shit about this story. But what was funny was, I do know enough to know that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted and found not guilty. So the fact that people are calling him a murderer is false. Like, that is misinformation being spread on Twitter right now, because people want to believe what they want to believe and not what actually happened, like what actually was found in a court of law, right? And then you can talk about all of this stuff. Like, does it actually matter? Like, was it rigged? Did they do it justice? I don't know, but my whole thing is, you can't play both sides of the fence. Like, you can't do that, right? Like, I can't say that, Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer when he was proven not guilty, and on the same breath say that whatever, I don't know, the election was rigged or something like that. Like I said, like, this is all political and I don't really know the answer, but I'm just giving you an example, right? So, like, yeah, the whole Twitter thing is kind of crazy. It's fun to watch, though, dude. It's really fun to watch, because it's just bananas. Like, people are losing their minds, and there's a bunch of double standards running on both sides. I'm politically in the middle. I've said that before. I'll say it again, but, like, politically, I'm in the middle, and yeah. So I don't know, but was it a good business decision? Twitter thought it was. All those guys who ran Twitter. Listen, so let's get back into kind of the NBA stuff. Yeah, like Republicans say the election is rigged when they lose, but fair when they win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't play both sides of the fence, right? I agree with you. Yeah, that's not fair. And it's just like, it's like when, and the left does it, the right does it. And to be honest with you, who knows what we're hearing is true? Like, what's true and what's not true. So I don't really want to get too political about this, but like I said, dude, like, that's a different conversation, and I don't really like talking politics. Is just like, I don't really know who to believe, right? The government certainly doesn't tell us the whole truth ever. So whatever. But by the way, back to Twitter and kind of like on this MBA thing. What's interesting about the whole Twitter buyout is that you got to realize, like, when Elon made the offer, the executive team, the management team, had a fiduciary responsibility to let them know about the offer, and then to let the shareholders know about the offer, and then to let the shareholders make a decision. So when Elon bought Twitter, it wasn't like a hostile takeover. This wasn't a go buy shares until we have a majority and then just take this over by brute force. It was an offer that everybody, including the CEO, took. So to think like this was some kind of hostile takeover or like some conspiracy. He had $44 billion. You want it for Twitter? They were like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Dead serious." They were like, "Deal." That's how it went down, and that's part of corporate. That's part of this corporate. I can't remember the phrase that we use all the time, but like, that's why we're also seeing profits spike. Like, inflation is at the highest, but corporate profits are also at the highest because, legally these guys are responsible. Like, For better or for worse, I'm just telling you how the system works. They're legally responsible for making as much money as they can for shareholders. And it's crazy, dude. Like the way a company goes public and then has to stay public, and then what they have to do to like for their shareholders when they become public, a public company is just wild. So it's just crazy how that all works. And like I said, I don't want to get too far into politics, but a lot of this does bleed over. Like a lot of these policies, like fractional reserve banking, for example, is a policy that helps the wealthy people when they're investing. That doesn't help out you and I necessarily, right? Like we're victims of that, and so it's just wild. But got time for a couple more questions if you guys want to hang out with me a little bit more. I appreciate the questions so far, man. Inflation's wild. Fractional reserve banking was a huge contributor to that. That's why you raise rates, by the way, is to make it harder for people to buy money, which means banks don't loan out as much money, which means there's less money in circulation, which means that we curb inflation. Typically, like I said, this is a high level view. Somebody's going to pick this apart and say, well, it goes deeper than that. And it absolutely goes deeper than that, but I'm just giving you the Cliff Notes version. Of getting your MBA with me, because we all got to get smart. We all got to get smart because these times are coming. And I want everybody to succeed. And I think that a lot of people can succeed. And I think that a lot of people can succeed, but it's not going to look the same. Like success isn't going to look the same for everybody, right? Like some people's success is getting a side gig that helps them make ends meet, right? And everybody can find a side gig that can make them a couple of hundred extra bucks. All right, Joel. Dang, thanks for watching, man. You're awesome. Can you explain the process of how an investment banking firm, you said baking, but I'm going to assume you meant banking, firm takes a company public? So there's a couple ways that you can take a company public. All right. Give me 1 second. So there's a couple ways that you can go public. And that's like the road to IPO. So you can do a SPAC, which is like, you got all these things, but so there's a few ways to do it, but you're basically, first of all, it's super expensive. There's a lot of regulatory stuff you're going to have to go through, especially with the SEC and talking about securities, because it's at that point you're offering a lot of stocks. Like public companies are traded on the stock market, right? So you're going to go through. They're going to open your books. They're going to audit the hell out of your books. They're going to make sure everything's good to go. You're gonna have. I mean, oh my gosh, dude. You're gonna, there's a pre-IPO offer where people are gonna buy your stocks. It's very kind of crazy. Maybe I'll do a whole nother video on just what it takes. Like, but if an investment firm is going to take if an investment firm is going to take a company public, typically that's going to be through what's called a SPAC, which is basically just kind of like everybody gets a piece of ownership of it, and then they create one big thing, and then they just push it through, right? But it's really expensive to go public, and it takes a really long time to go public. And then when you get public, like I said, your whole company is just owned by shareholders, stockholders. And at that point, it's just voting. Like you don't have a lot of say. Like CEOs don't really have a lot of say in what goes down because they got to answer to shareholders, and they have to maximize shareholder profit. So going public. I mean, Elon talked about taking Twitter private, which is really hard to do as well. That's really expensive to do as well. Going backwards can be really tough. So I'm going to start doing this a couple times a week. So if you guys want to join me. Please do. Please share this. Make sure that everybody knows about this, but I appreciate all the questions, and this was really fun. And by the way, Joel, maybe we'll talk about going public in the next episode. I'll go into more detail, but it's pretty tough. You got to file a prospectus with the SEC. They've got to audit your books. You have to have independent auditors go through your books. Then you got to figure out how many initial stock you're going to have, right? And then what that stock price is going to be. And there's a lot of like valuations that go into that. So you're going to be valued at this, so your stock's going to be X. And then you're going to have a pre-IPO offer, and all of these are going to go through brokerages, right? So like a Fidelity or the VC might even broker these deals, right? And get a piece of it. That's kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street stuff. And then you have your IPO. And then, depending on what happens after your IPO, it's going to get kind of crazy, but maybe we'll do a whole nother thing on that. Cause that is a big part of the MBA, but it's a humongous pain in the ass. I took a class on it, but good Gandhi, man, it's pretty difficult stuff to learn. And typically not a ton of us are going to see anything go public. And if you do end up going public, you're going to get a team of attorneys and a team of, finance attorneys and a team of CPAs, and you're going to go, and it's going to take you a few years to go public. It takes a while to go public. Because you've got to have your numbers have to be right. Your product has to be right. Typically you got to have all that in play. So I like to focus on not so much about going public, but about, what people can do every day. All right. Last question, Joel, I got you, bro. What was my favorite MBA class and why? My favorite MBA class, we had, it wasn't really a class, but it was like a couple of weeks in the class in my business operations class. What was my MBA in finance? So I got an MBA in finance. But my favorite class was the business operations, because we had 2 weeks of negotiation, like training, like how to negotiate in just in general, right? So like, but then like how to manage like hard conversations and things like that, because a lot of negotiation tactics that you're going to use in like a sale, is also how you kind of navigate difficult conversations. So that was really fun. That was really fun to learn about. We did a lot of like role plays and stuff like that. But my mind is all in accounting and finance, dude. So I had a lot of fun in my finance classes. I had a lot of fun in like the valuations classes, like to figuring out how much a business is worth. And like getting funding and stuff like that. I think that's really fun. Because I was able to kind of dumb it down for like when people who are just starting a business want to like go ask their, parents for money and stuff. Like, how do you do that? Like, what information should you have for somebody to invest in your business? Like, that's really fun to do. So for an example, like, what should you have if you want to go up to somebody and ask them for money for your business? You got to have you got to have financial statements. You got to have your balance sheet and your P&L. If you're just starting, then you got to have your pro forma statements. You got to look like you've done some homework. Like, if we sell for this, these are our anticipated projections and expenses and all that stuff. And then processes, right? Like it's funny because a lot of people are like, you don't need a business plan to start a business. And it's like, you're right. You don't. Sometimes you just need to hit the ground, hit the pavement and start going, right? Why are you asking me all these questions? What are the 3 ways PE funds make money with a leveraged buyout? I don't know, dude. I don't know. That's a funny question, dude. Why are you asking me that? Joel, put in the comments right now why you're asking me these questions. Crazy man. Are you testing me? Are you like undercover to see if it's worth it to get an MBA? What are the 3 ways PE funds make money with a leveraged buyout? I don't know. We did go through leveraged buyouts though. But I didn't, when I did my finance one, we did investments, we did financial, like we did financial, like valuations. Oh yeah, quizzing me, you douche. I was wondering why you were asking me a bunch of questions. I know that Joel got his degree in finance. But I did not get my bachelor's degree in finance. I got my bachelor's degree in accounting. So when I say I got my MBA in finance, I took like 5 finance classes. But yeah, I don't know. Private equity funds. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I do know that when you sign that term sheet, there's a lot of different ways that, I mean, yeah, obviously there's 3, but there are a lot of ways that they can make money on the equity and on the sale and on the, whatever percentages and stuff. Yeah, stop being a douche. Stop quizzing me. The point of this show is to help everybody kind of get through their life, man. I want people to be financially literate. I want them to understand sales and marketing. I want them to understand basic economics. And if you have to go to a PE fund, go to Joel. Joel will help you with your PE fund. Because I actually was going to go into private equity a while ago, and then I decided not to. And when I say like I was going to go, I was like actively interviewing, but for whatever reason, the stars didn't align and we didn't get to do it. So I ended up not doing that. I always thought VC would be fun too. Private equity VC, like that'd be pretty fun. They make a lot of money though, dude. But they lose a lot of money too. You got a company of like 20 portfolio companies. You're really banking on like 3 of them to do well and 10 of them to do so-so. And then you're expecting like 7 or 8 of them to just shit the bed. So I know that they make a lot of money just on 1 or 2 unicorns for sure. So, but that was fun. That was awesome, man. Well, let's do this again. We'll do this again later. And if you guys have any other questions, let me know. And maybe just tweet me your questions, and then we'll go over them next time. But all right, guys, I'm gonna sign out. You guys have a lot of fun. Stay safe. Go make some money. Go